Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming. Appreciate your being here. This is the penultimate interview for us this election season. Just as a reminder, this meeting or this Zoom is being recorded. It will be put up on the Olympia Indivisible website as well as our YouTube channel. We ask that you stay muted unless you have been asked to unmute for some reason to ask a question or make a comment. But speaking of questions, we'd appreciate it if you have one to put them in chat, preceded by a cue so that we know it's a question and not just a comment to somebody else. And we will, depending on what the question is, we'll either take it right away or we may defer it to the end. But please ask questions if you have them. Tonight or this afternoon, this evening, whatever, we have two candidates, both for Port Commissioner in District 4. First one is going to be Maggie Sanders, followed by Bill Moomau at 4:45. John Cezanne is going to be talking with Maggie. Why don't you take it away, John?
Thank you, Dan, and welcome everybody. Maggie, wonderful to have you with us tonight. We're looking forward to hearing all about you. So why don't you take a few minutes just to tell us about your campaign, about why you decided to run for the Port of Olympia Commission, and anything else you want to tell us about yourself.
Great. Thank you so much, John. I appreciate all of you coming today and listening to my my mission on why I feel it's imperative to run for this position, as it is a newly formed, redistricted portion of a community that will be able to provide voice in business decisions being made by the Port of Olympia. I was born and raised in Washington State. I learned about community firsthand from being raised by my single mother, who went to Evergreen State College. After she graduated from Evergreen as the first graduate of her family, I followed in her footsteps. First, I was accepted into law school, but at the time, my family, my father was struggling physically, and so I was not able to go to law school. But when the MPA Tribal Governance Program the first kind of its program in the nation came through Evergreen State College, I applied to the Masters of Public and Tribal Administration, where I learned all about federal Indian law, government to government relations, and working in the public office and in the sectors of state, federal, and tribal, working on government to government relations, which was my undergraduate degree, working on federal Indian law and policy, and working collaboratively with state agencies, federal agencies, local municipalities, academia, and the like. I've enjoyed everything that Evergreen State has to offer. And when District 4 opened, I felt that it was necessary, of being a longtime resident of Tenino for the last 12 years. I felt that it was important for me to run for this position, because I feel like I have a commitment to environmental, social justice, equity, inclusion, and that needs to be playing an active role in the civic responsibility of what the port has to offer as a publicly subsidized entity. And so I was born into the fabric of democracy, as the original signer of the Macaw Constitution was Jerry McCarty, my grandfather. So it gives me a unique perspective of being a triple citizen of the federal, state, Washington State, and the Macaw tribal government. So with that leadership, I learned the integral civic responsibility that we have to our voters and the people that we serve. And the port impacts everyone where we live, breathe, and transport and operate. And as commissioner, my my work and purpose for running is to support social equity in the environment and equal access to opportunities, from employment to contracting to environmental protection and social services in general, in environmental justice measures. I have been a human resources director where I implemented best practices and progressive disciplinary policy and procedures, and mentoring, coaching, and counseling and guiding for supervisors. I've been a change agent in writing actually law and order codes, as well as being the Moomau Employment Rights Office Director, EEOC Commissioner. I'm so sorry. My phone dropped. And Commissioner as Equal Opportunity Commissioner that ensured that all personal service contracts, including construction contracts in the multi-million-dollar realm to, several $100s, were in compliance with federal, state, and tribal laws in regards to fair labor standards, living wages, and basically the construction from beginning to end, to ensure compliance with the pre-bid process. And so I feel like I can bring the port to the next chapter of evolution, to be able to assist the port in educating and empowering people through partnerships and community building and representation and participation and collaboration. I feel that we need to work with local, state, tribal agencies, as well as nonprofit agencies. There's a lot of resources that the port can look to for collaborating with the Department of Ecology, the EPA, the Department of Commerce, numerous entities, to provide voice and lead greater transparency into the equity of decision-making that's sustainable for the port. And so that gives me a little bit of background regarding my professional background and why I want to run. But I also served as a Region 10 National Tribal Air Association Executive Committee member, where the 271 tribes voted me in on a national level to represent them on air quality issues with the federal government, where I flew back to Washington, D.C. to meet with EPA top officials in regarding air quality standards, meeting with me, just Region 10, but also every region in the United States met together and talked about priorities regarding air. And so I feel like being a part of that, as well as being a NASA ambassador for human health, air quality, and applied sciences, I have the training to access satellite data through NASA for environmental justice purposes, to identify air quality issues, wildfire, and impacts that that affect our environment. And so I feel like it's my professional career and experience in human resources, employment rights, working in construction. Also, I've worked with the United States Coast Guard. I've been a part of the regional oil spill response team. I'm actually trained as a FEMA certified FEMA trainer on training tribal leaders nationwide on how to prepare for natural disasters. And that includes flooding, to earthquakes, to everything you can imagine with the environment. And so I'm federally trained to be able to do that nationwide. And so I feel I bring a very important lens to the port in regards to air, HR, and employment and workforce development. And so that was the real key on why I wanted to run, and also to provide voice to the community, because I feel that we cannot have economic development without community development and workforce development, and connecting community to service and providing voice to the people that were elected for serving. And I'm not sure what more I can add to that. I've also, done a lot of work with the National Climate Assessment for ProPublica Diversity I have attended national adaptation forums and presented on national, regional, and local levels in regards to climate adaptation and mitigation and climate resiliency, from grassroots to policy development.
Okay, is that, are you done, or do you have more to say about
I think that that's most of what I bring to the table and why I want to be a part of this running for commissioner. I just feel that I bring a major lens to the table, you know, and experience as a public servant of over 2 decades, serving communities, working in capacities of all areas, and creating a community coordinated response to issues, policy, internal, external, and working with government entities.
Great. So tell us about your work on tribal issues and how that has impacted your professional life, and why you feel that your experience in these matters is important to bring to the Port of Olympia Commission, especially with regard to your work on saving tribal fisheries.
So for the last decade, that's the main focus that I had been working on in natural resources, is habitat restoration and protection. I feel it's imperative to protect the salmon and the habitat of our beautiful region. And my husband is actually a geoduck diver, and he, you know, depends on, you know, the Puget Sound waters. And so I feel that, you know, it's imperative and critical to save the salmon and protect the habitat in our local community and keep our ecological species and habitat in a very healthy state. I believe that the port has a lot of work to do in regards to the protection of habitat and shoreline protection. And there could be a lot of aquaculture exploratory things that they can do to protect the environment. And a lot of my work has done, you know, like derelict gear removal with the Marine Services Division. I've participated in large biomass geoduck surveys, and worked in climate change resiliency efforts on a nation wide, region and local wide, with affiliated tribes and Northwest Indians, National Congress of American Indians, Rising Voices 5 with NCAR in Boulder, Colorado, working in collaboration with Dr. Clarita Begay. She has been monumental with her work in outreach with tribal governments and organizations to help them become resilient in climate change adaptation and mitigation. And so this was started out as a grassroots work with Dr. Clarita Begay, but it ended up becoming a national priority for us to get the message out, which provided my ability to present at the National Adaptation Forum in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and also actually extended to Alaska, where Dr. Clarita Begay provided water sources to the Akiak community. And so my work in the tribal climate arena, as well as water quality and being a part of the Governor Inslee's Ocean Acidification Alliance, and being a part of the Region 10 oil spill response team and habitat restoration and Marine Services Division, as well as habitat restoration in estuaries and protecting the river of the Nisqually all the way out to the Puget Sound, has been a critical part of the work that we did at Natural Resources. And so for the last 10 years, that's what I've been working on. And prior to that, it was human resources and employment rights. And I also served as a business counselor 3 where I served on the board of the Oregon Native American Business Entrepreneurship Network, where we collaborated with Oregon to help assist meet business people's needs and access to services, from beginning to writing business plans all the way to fruition and business loans. And so I have experience in that as well. But that's pretty much my experience working in with tribes. It's very extensive, and I've worked on very, very many different public sectors and academia and nonprofits. And there's so much I could speak to about what I've accomplished in my climate change work and working with tribes. But it allowed me the opportunity to engage with all partnerships and collaborate with all people. So it provided me with the leadership and proven skills to be able to work collectively and collaboratively with all entities in regards to climate and policy, federal, state, and tribal.
Thank you. So you are president of an organization called Earth Stewards. What is Earth Stewards, and how does that impact how would that impact your service if you're on the Port Commission?
So Earth Stewards, I applied for that business license, and it's not active. And so I do have a business license under Earth Stewards, but it's never been launched. And it would have been for the environment, and it's not what I'm going to be pursuing at this moment. It's been open for probably a couple of years now. I just haven't had the time to invest in it, and my priorities have changed to the Port of Olympia.
Okay. So what is your view of the entire situation about the executive director, the staff turnover, the letter of complaint from the 22 members of the Port staff? And do you think that it was appropriate for Amy Evans to go public about the Sam Gibney performance review situation, where she had altered her review and wanted the commissioners to let her do that? What do you think about all that?
Well, I'm not really sure what the policy and procedures are in regards to the port and whether they can publish something like that to the public. But I believe that, if there were 22 letters of vote of no confidence, that it became a matter of public record that there's issues within the port. And learning from reviewing all of the information in regards to the port and the dealings with the executive director, I feel that I can't speak for what the port's doing at this point in time, but as a human resource subject matter expert and equal employment opportunity, a previous equal employment opportunity commissioner, I feel that there needs to be a clean sweep in the internal policy and procedures, as well as how they deal effectively with internal personnel related issues. And I feel that it was an extreme waste of taxpayer dollars. Each job is, in the thousands of dollars to post and fill. And so there needs to be a lot of human resources work that needs to be done within the internal organization to assist with this issue, and that the port could have handled the situation in a much better way than they have been in the past. And so I feel that it needs to be very much revised and do a clean sweep of internal policy and procedures to reflect the deficiencies in their policies and how they're dealing with performance based issues. I specialized in and created policy and procedures that were adopted with the Makah tribe in regards to progressive discipline, and formulating a progressive improvement plan, and thereby providing that it gives legal statutes to be able to terminate someone if they don't fulfill the obligations of their position. And so I don't understand why human resources is lacking, or or why they couldn't address the issue internally as it is. And it proves to me that there needs to be excessive review of policy and procedures.
Okay. Um, so what are your views with regard to the Panattoni deal in the New Market area and the Swire lease of 95 acres on the airport property? Those two separate deals. What is your opinion about all of that?
So I felt that in my questionnaire, I stated that I would not have voted to for the corporation to cut down the urban forest and to build warehousing on the New Market property. I feel that it impacts the next 10 generations. It's a 75-year lease. It's putting money into the coffers of it's a subsidiary of Hong Kong, China, and I feel that the port could have looked into alternative economic opportunities that wouldn't impact the city of Tumwater. I believe there is not an interlocal agreement, and they do not have a plan if there were going to be a flood. And I just feel that it's not feasible and sustainable to be able to have that there. And so as far as that is, I would have looked into alternative options and continued to explore, more sustainable businesses to be able to contract with. And so that was, and then the other question was the Panattoni. I'm sorry, I'm looking at my questionnaire. When I filled out the questionnaire, it was 19 pages, so I apologize for not being able to refer to it so much quickly as I would like to. I'm looking at the marine terminal dam.
Oh.
So sorry.
Thank you.
Oh.
Yeah, no, the Swire is the Chinese company, and that's the airport property. And
Yes.
Panattoni's in the New Market district in Tumwater. So,
where they were going to clear cut the trees.
Yeah, there's urban forest there that's at risk, and then the flooding problems.
Flooding zone.
You've referred to those, and stated in your questionnaire that you're opposed to both
Yes.
both of those actions from the port.
Exactly. So, I understand that there was a 38-page document that was submitted by the public that was not even considered in the decision making of these contracts, and I would have voted no on the Swire Coca-Cola. They could have looked into alternative solutions for contracts, because it impacts the city, the Tumwater, the city of Tumwater's water sources, and it impacts, and there's not an interlocal agreement that I understand. And so, yeah, I would have explored alternative. There's so many alternative economic benefits from looking at agriculture, looking at solar, wind energy, and so many different microgridding. There's millions of dollars coming out for housing and climate under the HEAL Act, and with the Department of Commerce, millions of dollars to prepare for Governor Inslee's initiative for clean energy and climate mitigation. And so, yeah, I would have voted no on both measures.
Yes, thank you. So the Port of Olympia is involved with the Department of Ecology on developing a plan to clean up Butt Inlet. Are you familiar with the current proposal? If so, what's your take on it? And is it reasonable to assume that the deep water shipping channel can be maintained for the continuation of the wire hazard log operation at the port. Is this sustainable?
I feel that dredging the port is not sustainable, and I feel that it would impact the environment. And with the, so that I answered that backwards. So could you repeat the second question? Or
Yeah,
the first
sure,
part?
sure. Make sure I'm unmuted. Okay. So the first part was just saying that the Port of Olympia and the Department of Ecology are developing a plan now that they've already committed several, well, 3 or 4 million, I'm not sure what the number is, in the
Right.
planning stages for this Bud Inlet cleanup. They're mandated to clean up Bud Inlet. And I was wondering if you're familiar with that proposal and what you think of that. And then, so that was one question. So I'm sorry, there was 2 questions there. Why don't we just talk about that?
Okay.
And
Yes.
then we'll get to the sustainability issue.
Yes. I believe the cleanup is absolutely necessary, and Bud Inlet and restoring it back to its original habitat, and working with the Department of Ecology to assist in that efforts. And I believe that it is imperative to bring back, its natural environment and protect the ecological and aquaculture and an environment around our beautiful water port and area there. And I feel that once the bridge is removed, that it would not be sustainable to dredge, and that it would be imperative not to just have a 50 foot protected shoreline, but to extend it out to at least 150 to 250 feet to protect the habitat in the area. So I really don't feel it's necessary to dredge, and I wholeheartedly support the cleanup and want to work with the Department of Ecology and all the people and collaborators, that are working towards, cleaning up the water quality standards and addressing the impairments to restore it to the state that it was, and develop and support to explore new opportunities of businesses, for water quality measures, and fix the flows of the Deschutes River into Capitol Lake. And so I will work to clean and am committed to improving the water quality and community and business access to these areas, and work to, restore habitat restoration, mitigation, and resiliency efforts so that all citizens and community members can enjoy the port.
So in the long term, do you think that your vision for cleaning up Bud Inlet is compatible with the continuation of the Weyerhaeuser logging operation?
No, I don't believe that would be sustainable after the removal of the bridge or the cleanup. I feel that would not be a sustainable business contract to keep at all. No, I would explore other options in economic development and looking at agriculture. Thurston County's farms have been reduced by 70% since the 1950s. And so Maria Cantwell and others have worked very hard on the USDA and getting federal monies to assist port operations in Seattle to look into agriculture and supporting our local farmers and storage containers. So that would be an option to export and import agriculture, and with the Keel Act and the millions of dollars coming from the Department of Commerce and the state, there's going to be millions of dollars to be able to deploy these initiatives, and the port could utilize that as an option to explore, smaller, economic development opportunities in regards to their port, and Weyerhaeuser is not a sustainable one.
Okay. Um, how can the port be an effective partner with other county public agencies to help in mitigating the effects of climate change?
So I feel that the port has an extreme unique role that they can assist in giving back to the community. I noticed on their website that they have small city funds where you can apply for a grant application to support the cities. I think that they could explore options to help the businesses that they currently lease to upgrade their facilities, to assist them to access to resources, and work collaboratively with all the, like, the Department of Commerce and other state agencies that are working to help mitigate climate change, because it could be from anywhere from electric vehicles to supporting, water quality standards, as well as sewer and water treatment facilities, um, clean energy. And so there's a lot of opportunity for the port to be able to work directly with even youth, to explore youth programs, working with academia, local businesses and community partners, and even tribal people to assist in their climate change in education and outreach and mitigation, and support these efforts.
Good. So you, in your questionnaire response to the question about transparency or the lack thereof on issues at the commission with the public, you said that there is not enough transparency. How do you think this should be addressed?
As part of my experience as the employment rights director, I saw contracts for EEOC, Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, in compliance with federal, state, and tribal law, from pre-bid all the way through construction. And I feel that if we're going to be going after contracts from the pre-bid all the way through to the end of the construction, I feel that the community should be aware and involved in that process. And I feel that a few town hall forums is not effective. Coming from a tribal perspective background, they say, tribal consultation is extremely important. But if the tribal consultation is received and in such a short matter, the tribal government, because sometimes documents take 3 to 4 weeks to reach leadership. And so knowing that tribes miss out on consultation opportunities, and decisions are made without their voice. And so I feel that it's extremely critical for the community's involvement, from beginning, to know what is the port considering. What are they looking at? How is that going to impact the community, and listening to the voices of the people that we serve. And so I feel that transparency in government contracting is extremely important, and that it should be all inclusive in the outreach that we do with the voters that voted us and elected us into office. I believe it's a very important part of the business practices, and it should be changed. And and so I don't know how, and I am committed to bring full transparency to contracts, and provide voice to the community from the beginning to the end. I feel that it's critically important, knowing, the experience of tribal governments being left out, from not, responding to certain consultations, and decisions are being major decisions that affect treaty trust resources, land base, water quality, air quality, and the like, our decisions are made without input from the tribes. And I feel the same as input from the community in regards to the port's business decision making.
We have a question from the audience from Melinda Holman. Says, how would you help create sustainable living wage jobs connected to the port?
Well, I feel that with economic development, we need community development, we need workforce development. I am 100% committed to the union and workforce development, and I have been a change agent in workforce development as the Taro director, dispatching employees to positions and ensuring that they were being paid prevailing living wage jobs. If the contractor was not in compliance with the prevailing wage or not in compliance with the contract, I had the authority to shut down multi-million-dollar contracts if they were not in compliance. So I feel that it's very important to develop the workforce and workforce development, and that could be working with the Teamsters. It could be working with local Evergreen State Call. It could be working with numerous partners, with the state, local, even tribal. There's very many innovative ways to develop workforce development within the port.
Great. So you worked with the Nisqually tribe quite a bit over the years, I believe, from what I read about your bio. And I imagine you worked with Bob Eyell, being that he runs the show there. So I was wondering if he's endorsed your candidacy, or could you talk about that situation a little bit?
So I worked in natural resources, and Bob works at the Nisqually. It's the it's the Economic Development Board. So he's the CEO over the casino, gas stations, tobacco stores, and the like. I did not have much interaction with Bob Eyell. Which is because we were at different locations within the tribal organization. And no, I do not have his endorsement. I have not talked to Bob Eyell, but I don't feel like I need his endorsement to win this campaign.
Okay, so this will be my last question, and then I'll let you have some time for closing remarks. So if you could have your wish for what the Port Peninsula would be like 20 years from now, what would that vision be?
I feel like it would be a beautiful waterfront destination, and be able to have access to recreation, parks, and a beautiful environment for people to enjoy, as well as, continue in economic development, but in a sustainable way that would not impact our beautiful community, by working together and beautifying our local waters. I would like to even explore aquaculture and set up by the Hands-On Museum, where there's wet, but there's also aquaculture where you could grow sealgrass, and maybe even explore. I believe the Nooksack tribe is growing clam beds, next to their port. And so there's so many different beautiful ways to enhance our environment by ecologic, by enhancing our beautiful waters and resources in water quality. And so I really feel like a destination port would be beautiful.
Okay. Well, let's see. We still have a look. Here's one more question from the audience. I think it is a question. Yeah. So Carla Wolfsburg asks, at least 2 current commissioners support the current executive director and have publicly credited her for bringing a high level of revenue to the port. Can you comment on the issue of maintaining a high level port revenue when it has been a result of an executive director's work who has demonstrated unprofessional and corrupt behavior with port employees and with local jurisdictions?
Well, that's a long question. So I've kind of looked at the port's really behind on updating their budget and
Wow.
their contracts. And so I've explored that, and a lot of their contracts are going to the same people, and the same organizations or companies. And so in regards to the executive director's performance, they need to be held accountable, and they need to do their jobs and really enforce their own policy and procedures. If she had, major issues with her performance, then they needed to be, handled in an appropriate way in accordance with, policy and state and federal laws. And I feel that they didn't handle the situation appropriately. And I feel that it's an ongoing issue, and hopefully they will address something like this. But I should say, when I'm elected, that's one of the very first things that I'm gonna look into, because as a human resource subject matter expert and equal employment opportunity commissioner, I went through basic mediation training, so I have skills, skill sets working with people that have difference of opinions or things like that. But I also don't have a problem noting for the record my disagreements or bringing up issues, and having it noted for the record with my reasons why, based on fact. And so it's definitely a human resources clean sweep that needs to be done internally to address these major issues.
Okay, thank you. So we're running out of time here. And there's so much more that we haven't got to that we can touch on, but we unfortunately don't have any more time left. So if you'd just like to take a couple minutes to tell us about how your campaign is doing. I see we have your website up if people want to take a look. That just brand new website that came up today.
Yes.
So, and any campaign events or any announcement you'd like to make.
Yeah, so I have the endorsement of Senator Claudia Kaufman. I will be hopefully receiving Senator Chris Stern's endorsement. I have the endorsement of the National Women's Political Caucus. I'm waiting to hear back from the Sierra Club, as well as the Washington Conservation Voters, as well as Native Vote and Fair Vote. And I am being supported by First Smile Circle, who will be doing money bombs into my campaign shortly. So that will boost up my campaign abilities to get out there and on the pavement and secure all kinds of excellent, exciting kickoff. So I'm getting ready to do my kickoff. I haven't determined a location yet, but I do have support from the Native American Democratic Caucus, as well as numerous other grassroots entities that are going to be coming through. So there's several endorsements that I'm waiting on word.
Well, thanks so much. It's really been a pleasure having you with us here today. And we wish you the best of luck in your future, in your campaign, all your future endeavors. So let me turn the mic over to Cindy Tufford, who's going to be introducing Bill Moomau. Thanks so much, Maggie. Bye.
Thank you.
So welcome. Thank you for joining us today. Unfortunately, I would really like to see you, but that cannot be remedied right now. Okay, so Bill, would you like to introduce yourself? Talk about why you're running, your background, your skills, what and how those skills would be put to good use as a port commissioner.
All right, thank you. Well, I was born in Chehalis. I lived in Thurston County for 40 years. I served in the Army. Then I went to Vietnam as a civilian working for a construction company that had marine operations. And I was office manager. We had 2 dry docks that repaired military vessels, and we had 11 T2 tankers that were anchored ashore and committed electricity for the military. I also worked for 3 years for Northern Pacific Railroads in passenger and freight, so I have some experience in transportation also. I like to travel a lot, so I have visited Hong Kong at least 10 times, and so that is a port. Olympia is not a port. And I've been to more countries than states, and so I toured a lot of ports around the world. I love Lisbon and Holland. Their ports are really quite impressive. Holland's is ugly because they do a lot of gas and oil and natural gas, so that's not an attractive port like Hong Kong. I retired from the Department of Labor and Industries. I was supervisor of employer services. I had 40 employees, 5,000 industrial accounts, supervised the cashier that received $1 billion in industrial insurance premiums during the year. So I have a little experience as a manager. I can't. So my campaign is really because I simply wanted to make a statement. And my statement is that I feel that the marine operations of the port are unsustainable. I don't see how we can financially continue to do something that we think is pretty maybe or nice to have, but not something that's really valuable, I don't think, to the community of Thurston County. So some of the port land, I think, could be leased to builders who would put up maybe condominiums and so forth. That huge warehouse, frankly, I would see if we could make an arrangement with the city of Olympia to make it into a facility for the homeless. It's huge. It could be divided into cubicles. You could do a community kitchen there and so forth. The city would have to keep it from being an eyesore, however, for the rest of the community. I'm not in favor of the contract with Weyerhaeuser being extended. I understand it expires at the end of this year. Weyerhaeuser is a $22 billion corporation, and it obviously knows how to negotiate successfully. But there are other communities in the state, Longview, Tacoma, Grays Harbor, which have facilities for log operations, and I'm sure Weyerhaeuser can make some kind of arrangement with those. So I would like to see the land that is the Weyerhaeuser yard made into something for the community, and possibly a park that would be lakeside. And I would reserve 15 acres for the Little League ball field that is being terminated eventually with the airport because of the federal aviation rules. So that was my general reason for really wanting to run, and we will see what happens as a result of that.
Thank you for that. So I recognize that you've had a really interesting career in marine operations as well as the Department of Labor, but I didn't see any post-high school degrees or certification. Do you care to elaborate on that?
Oh, sure. So, I was born in Chehalis, as I said. Lewis County is not a wealthy county, and my family certainly was not. So after I graduated from high school, I joined the Army. I spent 3 years in Italy as a colonel's secretary and have never complained about my military service. I moved to Portland and went to work for a manufacturing company. I have attended Centralia College, but I did not graduate. I have attended the University of Maryland and took classes in accounting. I've attended the University of Oregon in Eugene when I worked for the railroad, and took classes in art and so forth. But I have never completed a master's degree or a bachelor's degree. I've also gone to South Puget Sound Community College to take courses that I needed at Labor and Industries.
Okay, thank you. So from your responses in the questionnaire, you said you had specific feelings about a number of issues confronting the port. Can you just highlight, say, what your highest priority would be to, for those issues, how you would, if you became commissioner, and especially issues that affect District 4?
I'm an old man and I'm somewhat hard of hearing. I did not really understand your question.
Okay, so from your responses in the questionnaire, you say you have specific feelings about a number of issues confronting the port. Can you elaborate on issues that you consider the highest priority that you would like to address if you became a commissioner, especially those that affect District 4?
Okay. Well, I think my major one, of course, is the fact that I do not support marine operations. I'm obviously, the city has decided that they will remove the dam and the bridge. And one of the things that's going to occur then is that I think the silt from the Deschutes is going to contribute to a situation where dredging would be necessary if we continued with the port. But I see no reason to continue with the port, and therefore I see no reason for excessive dredging in so forth. I'm not in favor of the continual expansion in some ways that the port has done. So I think the 3 warehouses, the 3 buildings that are in Lacey, were a unfortunate purchase, and consequently I would be in favor of selling those. I think we're going to enter a recession. I think that we need to sell down debt, and interest rates will rise, which is going to be a problem. And so I want to remove that port, the warehouses that the port has in Lacey. Phone made me lose my train of thought.
In the financial report from the PDC, you list stock and real estate in Rochester with the name of Hecla Mining, which is the largest U.S. silver producer. Do you own a silver mine? And And can you comment as to this company's environmental impact?
No, so the PDC asked whether you own stock, and I do own stock in Hecla, but I had trouble in getting the addresses in there, and so I just left my address. So that address should be an address in Idaho, and I have somewhere around $5,000 in Hecla stock.
So you do not own real estate in Hecla?
No, I do
Okay.
not. I own stock in Hecla.
Okay, yeah, the PDC has you as real estate owner as well.
Yeah.
So today, Port Peninsula is dominated on the west side by a shipping terminal and a huge pile of logs destined to export to Japan and China. And on the east side, mostly by the Swantown Marina and associate operations. Given that your response in the questionnaire about the future of the marine terminal was very interesting and specific, could you describe what your vision would be for the Port Peninsula 20 years from now, and how that vision would serve the best interest of all citizens of Thurston County?
Well, I think 20 years from now, hopefully the homeless situation will be resolved. I don't know how long that situation would have to occur if we did permit the city to use the warehouse for housing. I would think that along the waterfront, where close to that warehouse and so forth, you could continue some of the construction that the rents and so forth have there now. Perhaps condos, because people would like to have waterfront condos. But the part that belongs to the yard, I can see becoming ball fields, community things, a small park perhaps, something that would be useful for the citizens of Olympia and Thurston County. And the cranes would go, the docks could be used for community functions also, I think. You could perhaps extend Port Plaza to include some facilities there. I think it makes the port become something for the community when in fact it cannot become a viable, economical port. And in addition to all of this, if you look at Marsh, which is one of the largest shipping companies in the world, their revenues are down about 20% this year because ships are not going to and from China as they did before. So I don't think that Tacoma is going to have a huge amount, or Seattle, of the ships and shipping that they've had in the past. And so how Olympia at the end of Puget Sound and 50 miles more of travel can be a viable port, I don't understand.
Okay. When you were asked in the questionnaire about union jobs and diversity, you mentioned your involvement in several AIDS organizations that included being director, treasurer, and chairperson. Are you still involved? And how do you think the skills you acquired with this effort will help you be a better commissioner?
Well, COVID kind of created a problem with many social and volunteer organizations. So for the last 2 or 3 years, we did not have, for example, the World AIDS Day banquet, which I had chaired a couple of times. And also volunteering for Pierce County AIDS has become a difficulty because they closed the facility that they had in Olympia and do not have a volunteer activity here that's available. So I keep abreast of things that happen, particularly through empowerment, and but I'm not active in any particular role at the present time. I'd served on the Pride Committee with Anna in the past and so forth, but I'm not doing that this year.
Okay. So on that same question, it was asked what your opinion of union jobs was. Do you support union jobs, especially at the port?
Well, I would support union jobs at the port. Ports are notorious for having longshore unions that are very powerful and so forth. And obviously, if the port continued, then those jobs would continue. But as a state employee, I was a member of the Washington State Employees Union, and consequently, I have no problem with people, our employees, being members of unions and negotiating with them appropriately and paying them very adequate salaries. I'm not sure what the average salary is at the port, but I assume that it's obviously a living wage.
Okay. You say in the question about destination waterfront and living shoreline that you have not familiarized yourself with these proposals. Are you aware that there is a port meeting this Tuesday at 6 p.m. on exactly this topic to include a walking tour after the meeting?
That's the volunteer committee, the advisory committee. Is not the port committee, it's the advisory committee. Yes, I'm aware of that meeting. Yeah.
Okay. From the questionnaire, you have lived 25 years, for 25 years, only 1 mile from the Olympia Regional Airport, but you are not against its expansion. Can you explain your position?
Well, as I understand it, the airport is not really expanding per se. The airport is modernizing. It's changing some of the runways and things like that. But expansion, as most people would consider becoming larger or having more runways or having more facilities, it really isn't doing that. As far as I know, and having attended the open houses that they had, their primary actions are modernizations and not the expansion to the extent that we would have much greater air activity.
Okay. Your response from the question about port transparency, you indicated that you thought there was enough port transparency to the public. Meanwhile, there hasn't been any update in the news on the letter of no confidence in the director, Sam Givney, by port employees last July. There hasn't been an update of the status of the director of real estate, Ellen Rowe, who was one of the signers of the no confidence vote, who was put on an unexplained administrative leave in December. There hasn't been a status on Mr. Rowe's subsequent legal action against the port or the status of the Weyerhaeuser contract. Can you help us understand why you feel there is enough transparency with the public?
Well, you know, in a society that we have today, where everything is on the internet and there are so many things that are happening, most people probably do not have a great deal of information about the port because the port is not their primary interest. So the things about the port, I feel the people who are interested usually will find quite a bit of information about what the port is doing. And I'm not sure how many more things can be done to make it more transparent. I of course have simply been a person who has read the things that are in the newspaper, looked at the website for the port, and attended some of the port meetings. So I understand your concern that perhaps additional information hasn't been made available, but I don't know from a personnel point of view what more can be released to the public about Mr. Rowe's activities or Mr. Rowe's problem at the moment.
So you feel that there's adequate exposure on these issues?
Well, I assume that at some point, you know, a lawsuit is going to take place and the public will be advised and informed about the court hearing and so forth. I'm not sure how much more information can be given, but I'll leave it at that.
Okay. In your response to the question about the public's role relative to the port's strategic plan and the 2050 vision, you say that the port needs to make the public aware and to consider the public's input. How do you propose to do that?
Well, I think that the port does what most businesses or government organizations do today. So, but again, as I say, many people, you know, the port is not their primary interest. So the website is regularly updated. Articles appear in the newspaper and on Volts and so forth. And I just feel that that's where we are, and that it's relatively adequate. The people who are really interested, such as yourselves and so forth, will continue to probe and try to find information that wouldn't normally become available through, say, the Olympian or the radio or internet.
Okay, on another topic. Would you have voted for the Panattoni deal?
The Panattoni deal?
Correct.
Okay.
Would you have voted for it?
Oh, would I have voted for it? I don't think at this moment I'm prepared to say that I would have voted for it. I think that the issues that have been raised by the people in Tumwater and so forth in regard to the forested areas and so forth are valid. I would hope that as time goes by, that if Tumwater City is interested in acquiring some of that land for a forest park or something of that nature, that hopefully they would be able to do that. I would like to see some of the forested area set aside as a park, but I'm not sure what Tumwater's ability to purchase and maintain another park is. Having a house near the Tumwater, we have a situation where the city of Tumwater is building a park where the old horse arena used to be on 79th, and it's taken them, I don't know, 3 years at least from the time they purchased the land to now, and we still don't have a park. So those sort of things obviously take a long time to get done, and what Tumwater can do, I don't know. But I would be open to considerations for some of that land becoming a forest park or something of that nature.
So would you have voted for the Swire Coca-Cola deal?
The Squire one, I probably would. As I understand, that's land that's not forested. It's land that's toward the east and south of the airport, and is land that's not being used at the present time. Is it's flat prairie land.
Okay.
My concern about all of this is, I think the issue of adequate water supply for the cities and the community is a major concern. And as we continue to build these huge, gigantic warehouses, like I see on 93rd, that owned by Crow and the one by Costco, I just can't imagine where all the water for this is coming from. And in regard to the Panettone thing, I noticed that the previous person mentioned the flooding thing. I don't know what the flood situation is, but I remember about 30 years ago, I-5 was practically underwater, and the area on both sides at 93rd was underwater. And I worked for Labor and Industries, and we have gigantic pumps in the basement at Labor and Industries because that area was underwater. So I just don't quite understand how we can continue to build all of these warehouses in an area that potentially, has water problems and flood problems.
Okay. On yet another topic, in your response about the port problems that have been reported, in the port employee problems that have been reported, you say that you suspect that Sam Gibney current medical leave might be an attempt to take advantage of her accumulated sick leave in advance of her departure from the port. Can you explain your opinion of Sam Gibney and why you think this might be occurring?
Well, obviously, in hindsight, she probably was not the best hire that could have been made for the port. But I understand that probably there are problems in her removal or her departure because of the contract. And I don't know what all is in the contract, but I understand that if they let her go, they probably are going to have to pay a huge amount of money. So I'm just kind of suspicious that since she's taking medical leave, she's anticipating leaving, because the state very stupidly only gives you 1/4 of the value of a day of sick leave versus annual leave. So most state employees take all the sick leave they can before they leave and hold their annual leave to sell. So just having seen that happen many times at Labor and Industries, I'm a little suspicious about why she's taking such a long sick period.
Okay. The only other thing I have is just, how your campaign is going. Do we have any questions?
No, again, as I said, my primary interest in running was simply to make a statement because I think there are a lot of people who have similar points of view, and I'm sure that the port is a government organization that will probably continue to exist, but it does take $6 million out of the taxpayer's pocket for taxes each year. And the question is, are all of these things really, really necessary? And is the port a facility that should be doing these things, or should some of these things be more regularly done by organizations that are directly involved, particularly like agriculture? I'm not sure the port has a great deal of interest in agriculture. Agriculture is covered by Conservation District, the Extension Service of the Washington State University, and a number of other organizations that are agricultural in Thurston County. So I'm not sure that we need to be involved in all the different kinds of aspects that the port is involved in at the moment.
Okay. So can you tell us, how your campaign is coming along, raising money, staffing, websites, kickoff events, endorsements, interviews? Can you let us know how that's all going?
Well, I agreed to only raise $7,000 so that I did not have to do all the reporting and that sort of thing. I've done a function with the what is it, the women's organization,
League of Women Voters.
right. And so I'm just going to go to meetings that I'm invited to and that sort of thing and participate in that way. And I'm not running a $50,000 campaign like one of the candidates did 4 years ago. And I'm not checking everybody's PDC reports to see if they're getting money from Weyerhaeuser or something of that nature. This is just a citizen campaign by a citizen.
Do you have any endorsements?
I've not asked for any endorsements.
Very good. Okay. Well, that's all I have. Does anybody else have any questions?
Well, there's no questions in chat. Does anybody else want to ask anything?
Well, thank you very much, Bill, for joining us. And I'm going to turn this over to Dan.
Well, thank you for inviting me, and it's been an interesting experience. Thank you very much.
Well, thanks again, Bill. That was very interesting. I appreciate you taking your time. We have put the Olympia Indivisible website link into chat where people can go to see the interview once it gets, both interviews, once the videos get put up. There is one more town hall tomorrow at 11 o'clock with one last candidate. And the endorsement team is going to be giving our all-member presentation with the results of our endorsement work Saturday, June 24th at 10 o'clock. And the link to register for that is also on the Olympia Indivisible website. Thank you very much.
Thank you.